So, this video is going to be the first part of what I think is a brand new series I'm going to start. After the booming success of my first video I uploaded, however many months ago, I decided I had peaked here on YouTube and went on to greater things like education and Half-Life 2, but it turns out I simply can't ignore the creativity inside my bones. You see, a few days ago, I was on a long, grueling 2-mile run and was listening to an album I hadn't heard before. I've been listening to metal for a while now, but I've kind of gotten into the habit of just listening to the same songs over and over. And finally hearing something new kind of inspired me to broaden my horizons and listen to some new stuff. So this series will be meant to expand my horizons while also giving you a chance to hear some new stuff. Basically, I'm going to review a brand new album that I have not listened to before semi-regularly, probably every Wednesday or something. It'll mostly be metal, but I listen to other stuff too, like dungeon synth, punk, folk, and dare I say a wee bit of Alan Jackson. So with the series properly introduced, this will be my first episode, starting with the album that first inspired the series, Product of Imagination by the band Paradox. Since most video essays have a structure, I'll lay out a structure for the video before we start. I'll start with an overview, then I'll go over writing, sound, similar albums, and then my favorite song, riff, and final rating. For an overview, according to the glorious words of the Encyclopedia Metallum, oh dang, they have merch now? Might have to replace my Badlands Chugs shirt. Paradox is a German prog, thrash, power, speed metal band. Product of Imagination was their first LP and came out in 1987, which puts it around that late thrash, early death metal time frame. Apparently Paradox is still active, with their latest album coming out in 2021, which is neat. As for writing, the composition is very reminiscent of the time period, with the typical E-standard thrash-style riffing. However, it is surprisingly solid and mature for being their first LP. There are some good harmonies interspersed in the title track, Mystery and Pray to the Gods of Wrath. Time signatures remain relatively stagnant, but such is to be expected for an old-school thrash band. Of course, there are plenty of fast sections for my fellow G-Fuel chugging pizza thrashers out there, but there are actually a few good mid-pace sections. As for the album structure, the beginning does a good job of kind of slowly introducing the listener to the album before just blasting off with the second track, which is a proper speedy thrash song. I like the inclusion of Continuation of Invasion in the middle of the album too. It's a tempo-less shred section that kind of gives the listener a break from all the speed before blasting into the second half. As for the ending, however, Wotan 2... Hey, so I'm editing this right now, and turns out it's actually Wotan 2. Really need to look over these scripts before I start reading. Wotan 2 just doesn't really feel like a proper ending for this album. While quick, it feels very abrupt for an album with such long and epic tracks. Now on the first listen, it felt very generic thrash to me, but actually after hearing it a few more times, there are some sections that have a bit of power metal and traditional metal influence, which kind of differentiates it from the other bands at the time. Overall, the writing is very reminiscent of the time period, but very well executed. The sound is fantastic as well. The guitars sound thrashy with that little hint of Halloween influence in there too. The bass cuts through the mix super well, and the drums and vocals are pretty accurate to the genre, though not really anything special. The vocals largely derive from the Nuclear Assault Testament type style, where it's not particularly shouty, but still has the thrashy edge to it. I would appreciate some more personality in the voice, like your Steve Souza or your Tom Angel Ripper, but it's certainly not bad vocals. The mixing and mastering is pretty much flawless. I particularly like that little touch of reverb that gets added on there. A lot of thrash after Master of Puppets opted for less reverb, but Paradox still keeps that touch of reverb that the classics had. Gives more of a grandiose, theatrical feel rather than that getting spat on by the singer type feel. As for similar albums, I'd say stuff like Testament's first two albums, Nuclear Assault Survive, and Death Angels The Ultraviolence are all very similar to this album, though they are missing that power metal influence that Paradox has, so this album still has that touch that makes it unique. My favorite song has gotta be the title track, with Mystery coming in second place. It's got that clean intro, brief fast sections, and then showcases that power metal influence with the main riff, which also perfectly segues into my favorite riff. Wow, nice transition, dork. For the final rating, I honestly really like this album. I'll give it a respectable 7 out of 10. Better than the average thrash album due to that power metal influence and mature sound, but doesn't bring much new material to the table. Granted, I tend to be more of a death metal guy myself, so for the previously mentioned G-Fuel chugging pizza thrasher, this album is probably going to be a lot more your speed. If you're a fan of old school thrash, certainly give this album a shot. Honestly, I'd say it's on par with early Testament and Nuclear Assault, and I'm definitely giving their other stuff a listen. So yeah, that does it for my first album review. Be sure to stay tuned for the next one, which will probably be next Wednesday, unless I get bored. I'm not really sure yet. Bye.